the President of India. Good afternoon, Honorable President, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the inauguration ceremony of the Hindu Center for Politics and Public Policy. The center is a unique new venture in the public domain from the Hindu group of publications, adding to its bouquet of offerings to build robust public discourse on critical issues through research and dialogue. We begin this afternoon's program with an invocatory song by the eminent Carnatic music vocalist, Vidwan Shri T.M. Krishna. Please remain seated during the rendering of the song.
Vande Mataram, Vande Mataram, Vande Mataram, Vande Mataram, Sujalam, Suphalam, Malayaj Sheetalam, Sasyashamalam Mataram, Vande Mataram, Subhrajotsna Pulakitayamini, Pullakusumita Dhrumadala Shobhini, Subrajotsna Pulakitayamini, Pullakusumita Dhrumadala Shobhini, Suvasini Sumadhura Bhashini, Sukhadam Varadam Mataram, Vande Mataram, Vande Mataram, Vande Mataram.
May I now request Mr. N. Ram, Director, Kasturi & Sons Limited, to please welcome all our guests.
Rashtrapati Ji, leaders of political India, members of the diplomatic corps, media colleagues, friends from various walks of life, the Hindu Center for Politics and Public Policy is a newborn venture associated with a 134-year-old newspaper, and it is an honor for us that the Honorable President of India has consented to inaugurate it. It would be strange if I were to extend a welcome to Sri Pranab Mukherjee at his official residence But let me say a warm thank you, Rashtrapati Ji, for having us here and consenting to do the inauguration in this magnificent setting. The Hindu, founded on September 20, 1878, is the oldest surviving major daily newspaper of Indian nationalism, by which we mean the great socio-political movement that won freedom for India from colonial bondage and helped consolidate the gains of independence in every sphere of national life. We think that setting up a serious intellectual niche or division within Kasturi & Sons Limited, the company that publishes our newspapers, is an idea whose time has come. There's a great deal of superficiality and dilettantism, not just in mainstream Indian journalism, but also in public discourse on key issues that matter. Alongside this, we note a widespread disenchantment with policies and institutions which have clearly performed below par and let the people of India down. Recently published opinion polls testify to this mood of popular disenchantment. There are many things going for democratic India, above all the abiding strengths of our ancient, living, historical civilization, our sound constitutional balances and safeguards, and the good sense, wisdom, and resilience of our people. But recent events remind us that we face tough challenges such as massive corruption and misgovernance, assaults on democratic values from within and without, and violation of women's rights, dignity, and lives. As costly are the grievous failures to address the inequalities and the mass and multiple deprivations that plague the lives of hundreds of millions of our people. The mission of the Hindu Center for Politics and Public Policy will be to provide intellectual ballast and substance to our and to the reading public's understanding of selected political subjects, challenges, and issues. It's become a fashion in some quarters to decry politics, to depict it as nothing but a cynical game, to treat it at best as some kind of necessary evil. We firmly disagree with such perceptions and attitudes. We take democratic politics seriously, regard it as having much potential for good, notwithstanding its seamy side. We regard public policies, their orientation, content, and impact as vital to how a society fares. The core values the Hindu has been committed to over the long term will be the bedrock of the center's orientation and activities: truth-telling, freedom and independence, fairness and justice, secularism, respect for diversity and pluralism, humaneness, contributing consciously to the social good. We take these guiding principles seriously. They are not motherhood and apple pie sentiments, as Americans would say. We do not see the Hindu Center as being in competition with our universities and other academic research centers. The political studies we will fund, support, and bring to public life, public light will be focused, close to the ground, and of demonstrable public and policy interest. We envisage this research, as well as its publication and dissemination, to be fast-tracked, at least in comparison with what universities and other academic institutions are used to. The way the Justice J.S. Verma Committee went about its work and came up with what could be a game-changing contribution within the 30-day deadline it set for itself is an inspiration and a model for all of us. While you'll hear more about the Center's mission and proposed activities from other speakers, but I hope I've given you an idea of why we are assembled here. I warmly welcome everyone who has responded to our invitation and once again express our gratitude to the Honorable President of our Republic, himself a reservoir of knowledge on politics and public policy. So welcome.
May I now request Dr. Malini Parthasarathy, Director of the Hindu Center for Politics and Public Policy, to please introduce the center.
Honorable President, Mrs. Sonia Gandhi, Mr. L.K. Advani, and other distinguished guests, friends, well-wishers, and people who have come from all over the country to express solidarity with the idea of a Hindu center. I express my most sense of overwhelming gratitude and humble acknowledgement of a historic task that we should accomplish. It's also a singular honor that it's been inaugurated here at Rashtrapati Bhavan, the ultimate symbol of this great republic. It augurs well for the center as an active instrument of public service. The context in which the idea of the center has emerged is a sharp sense of a breakdown of the basic consensus of governance, and also a sense of an increasing polarization of the discourse to the extent that legislative business is not allowed to proceed, and Parliament is very often held hostage and reduced to a matter of just counting the votes. So we do think we need the center to bridge this gap, a widening, increasing gap in perception that's holding the whole country to ransom and causing great public anger. So we think the center should help strengthen the foundational liberal principles which have made this country great. The center ought to be a practical instrument of change rather than solely engaging in theoretical explorations, especially when there's a lot of frustration and anger. We don't want to just add to piles and piles of knowledge. We do want to make sure that all the streams of activity, 3 streams of activity, our research, our seminars and workshops, our lectures, and our roundtables where we hope to do some arbit for internal reconciliation like you do track 2 for India and Pakistan. We hope to do that for, it's an ambitious task, for Kashmir or for the Maoist problem or issue, as somebody would want to say, or even the Northeast. So the idea is that the center functions as a multifaceted body, not just a theoretical academic institution. We see our role also as taking forward a re-examination of fundamental constitutional principles that have become so contentious and controversial. For instance, the definition of nationalism. I think Sri Advani was here. I mean, the whole struggle between composite nationalism and cultural nationalism, we do think that needs to be debated quite constructively and try to take definitions forward with a view to strengthening the liberal foundation of our republic. We also think that things like secularism, social justice, all these things would have to be re-examined with full earnestness, open-mindedness, but with a clear commitment to the original framework on which the Constitution was founded. On this very historic occasion, I take it upon myself to pledge that the Centre will make every serious endeavor to help elevate the tenor of public discourse. We come from a tradition of constructive participation in national building and nation building. So I would like to dedicate this center to our eminent forefathers, Kasturi Ranga Iyengar and Kasturi Srinivasan, whose impassioned commitment to public activism as they were the builders of the Hindu shall ever be our inspiration. We are very, very grateful to the distinguished leaders of politics, industry, and other spheres who have come here today to witness the center's launch. We very earnestly request your support and your help in taking this initiative forward and to make sure that we can really work together on the task of getting our country back on track. Thank you.
We now share with you, ladies and gentlemen, a short film on the Hindu Center.
At the stroke of the midnight hour, when the world sleeps, India will awake to life and freedom.
A nation is born, brimming with promise, democracy at its best.
The achievement we celebrate today is but a step, an opening of opportunity to the greater triumphs and achievements that await us.
But in recent years, the challenges have been mounting. Increasing cynicism about democratic institutions and political processes. Rapidly declining faith in the system.
Long years ago, we made a tryst with destiny, and now the time comes when we shall redeem our pledge.
To renew India's tryst with destiny, the Hindu group presents a bold initiative. From a tradition built, from a reputation earned as India's most trusted media group, comes the Hindu Center for Politics and Public Policy. It has a singular mission: to restore public confidence in the democratic process. The Centre will revisit constitutional concepts to evaluate their continuing validity, examine issues of politics and governance, probe public policy and institutional failures, provide a platform to address issues for the public good and a healthy democracy. The Centre will actively promote dialogue and debate and hold Track 2 type roundtables for internal reconciliation. Research and findings will be made available through print media and the Internet. The Hindu Center for Politics and Public Policy aims to create genuine stakeholders in India's democracy and empower citizens to influence public policy. Today, the Centre dedicates itself to the revival of pride and faith in democratic India.
May I now request Dr. Sunil Khilnani, member of the Advisory Board of the Hindu Center for Politics and Public Policy, to please address the distinguished gathering.
Honorable President of India, Shri Pranab Mukherjee, distinguished guests. The famously argumentative Indian has today become the cynical Indian. Cynical about politicians, policy, public life, and even about the constitutional order itself. The problem is not a begrudging citizenry, but the harsh reality that every government gets the cynicism it deserves. But what do we do to redress this corrosive condition? One that threatens not just the credibility of our governance, but the idea of India itself. As we collectively yearn for the great leaders who can wave away disillusion and re-enchant our political imagination, it is easy to lose sight of a subtler truth. That great democracies are built and sustained not just by great leaders, but by the steady, painstaking work in a quieter tranche, a tranche where urgent social problems are researched with rigor, where the word debate signifies something more than a barrage of pre-rehearsed TV soundbites, where policy ideas are tested and refined on the basis of hard-won evidence, with an eye towards the greater common good. It is in these quieter corridors of political thinking that a society begins to create the self-knowledge that it needs, expands its range of practical policy options, and begins to unravel its dilemmas. What usefully can we say of Maoist unrest and despair in large parts of our countryside if we do not grasp the administrative abstentions and state failures in these regions? How can we debate the utility of reservations as a social justice tool when we have such patchy data on its effects? What can we say about who indulges and who benefits from corruption when we have investigated so little of its workings? Much of what we try as policy is based on little evidence. We need more than ever spaces where evidence and truth can lead us to policy choices, not where perceived offense and fear incite calls to arrest unconventional ideas. Without such incubatory spaces for independent inquiry, our political ideas will remain as wishful, our political realities as arid, and our responses to a concerned citizenry as hollow as they are today. And make no mistake, our cynicism is not an Indian character flaw. It is a product of intellectual frustration. Frustration at a world made opaque to citizens, where they cannot ever be sure what the policeman, the teacher, the doctor, the bureaucrat, the elected official will do, because they cannot be sure to whom these authorities are truly responsible. We have intellectually disenfranchised our fellow citizens, and a frank recognition of where we now stand is the first step towards re-inclusion. It could not, therefore, be more right that India's respected newspaper of national record, published by the great house of Kasturi and Sons, has chosen this moment to create the Hindu Center for Politics and Public Policy. It will support with full intellectual freedom investigations into our changing society and politics. From its home in the South, it will place its findings in the public sphere for scrutiny and debate, and to improve our public choices and outcomes. The work of the Hindu Center must speak not only to government, but to academics and the media, to the corporate world and to activists, to the establishment and to the disaffected, and above all to us as citizens. For we are past the time when government in its arrogance could credibly claim that it knows best. But we need also to move beyond the current modish contempt for government, to be found among many corporate leaders, as also the condescension of intellectuals. These circles of mutual disdain damage the prospects for effective policy. At a time when the Indian Republic is in profound need of renewal, when we need to reinvigorate our institutions, remind ourselves of our founding principles, when we face, that is, big and daunting tasks, we need to rediscover the primacy of policy, the smaller, measurable steps by which a society moves towards high ideals. For it is only if citizens can sense that movement in their everyday lives and struggles that the ideals embodied in our Constitution will appear as worth sustaining. The idea of India was never, as some cynics have claimed, an ideology. At heart, it was an experimental idea, an experiment like no other in what a nation could be. Born in testing circumstances, it was an idea that will survive and strengthen through further testing. We need to treat it as such, a living, evolving idea, not backward-looking, not defensive of old principles. As we strengthen and deepen the spaces for independent policy thinking, we quietly but firmly strengthen the possibility that we can self-correct and become a fairer, less divided nation, so redeeming, not wholly or in full measure, but quite tangibly, the promise of our Constitution. Thank you.
May I now request the Honourable President, Mr. Pranab Mukherjee, to inaugurate the Hindu Center for Politics and Public Policy by unveiling the plaque. May I now request the Honourable President, Mr. Pranab Mukherjee, to this gathering.
Good morning. Dr. Malini Patsarthi, Director, the Hindu Center, Sri N. Ravi, Director, Kasturi and Sons Limited, Sri N. Ram, Director, Kasturi and Sons Limited, Sri Sunil Khilani, Member Board of Advisors, Hindu Center, Sri H.D. Deve Gowda, former Prime Minister, Srimati Sonia Gandhi, Dr. Farooq Abdullah, G.K. Bhashan, L.K. Advani, Dr. Karan Singh, senior political leaders, ministers, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. It's indeed a privilege for me to be present on the occasion of formal inauguration of the Hindu Center for Politics and Public Policy. We require some centers where there would be dialogue, there will be discussions, and where we can address in an objective manner from different perspectives how to address the ills and problems with which we are confronted. As while introducing the subject, Mr. Khilani has very correctly pointed out that the frustration which we see today is not only confined to one territorial entity, it spreads all over the world. In our younger days, when India also started its tryst with democratic destiny, constitutions were framed, we were taught that the essence of democracy is 3D: debate and discussion, dissent, and finally decision. As a member of Parliament, when I entered into Parliament in the late 60s, and I had the privilege of serving this great institution, I am sorry for sharing my personal perception, but at the same time I think perhaps I can share it with you with this distinguished gathering with the objective that I would like to have a very serious discussion, and perhaps the center which is just now being inaugurated can be the most appropriate forum to do that. We were told by our teacher of political science that 3 Ds are essentials for democracy, that is debate and discussion, dissension, and finally decision. And when I retired from Parliament on the day of my election as President to this office, I found there is another D which has injected in between, that is disruption. And disruption of the proceedings of the House, on the other hand, simply we cannot brush aside that it is irrelevant, it is not necessary, because there are persons who are doing it, they are equally members of the Parliament, they are equally responsible political personalities. Therefore, is it not time for us to find out how we can address the issue in its proper perspectives? Sometimes it may happen to compel a recalcitrant administration or government of the day to agree to some discussions or debate through a particular rule, and it leads ultimately to the disruptions. But the end result of the disruption is, to my mind, and as I said that I spent quite some time in Parliament when I entered in late 60s, and when I retired, incidentally it happened in the month of July 69 to July 2012, when my membership of Lok Sabha came to an end on the date of my election to President. That whether disruption puts any serious pressure on the government, or it simply denies the rights of the individual members to express his views at the highest national decision-making body. Whether sometimes it provides advantage to the government, because questions hour are the first victims of nowadays, and questions hour are being used by the members of the parliament, particularly the private members, more than often to put searching questions to the minister, not only to get information but also to sometimes find out the contradiction in the policies of the government. Similarly, we talk of electoral reforms. We talk of how the institution should be strengthened. After all, any democratic system survives, becomes effective on the strength of its institutions. If we make a comparative study where the parliamentary form of democracy has become successful in neo-liberated developing countries which got political emancipation after the Second World War, and where it has failed, perhaps one of the reasons, the countries where it failed, they failed to establish the relevant institutions to support the democratic structure. Institutions like independent judiciary, free press, legislature and executive, though in parliamentary form they are one dependent on the other, but essentially the legislature having total control over executive in respect of money, finance, taxation, and how these institutions could be made more effective. Again, I am drawing one example from my own experiences. When I entered into parliament in the late 60s and early 70s, we used to find very enumerated, exhaustive discussions on budget, on finance bill. Financial transactions in those days were not of very high order. If I remember correctly, the first budget of independent India, total budgetary transactions, receipts and expenditure was 197 crores of rupees. 171 crore is the receipt, 197 crore was the expenditure, divided between not so complicated plan, revenue, capital, non-plan expenditure, very simple, military expenditure, civil expenditure. 96 crores was military expenditure and 101 crores was civil expenditure. Taxations were also very simple, income tax and customs. And for that, Parliament devoted good deal of time. Size of the first plan was just 2000 crores, which was introduced in 1951. And if anybody goes through the proceedings of Lok Sabha and Raj Sabha, they will find almost 4 days they debated on the approach paper of the plan. Then when the plan was finally adopted, and in between when the midterm appraisal of the plan was placed before the parliament. Today our budgetary transaction is more than 12 lakh crores of rupees. The 11th plan which we have completed, and on the end of the 12th plan, total plan outlay was more than 37 lakh crores of rupees, and it is for us to search ourselves how much justice we are doing to these huge budgetary transactions, financial transactions, over which nobody else except the elected members of the parliament and legislative assembly have exclusive control as per our constitution. No money can be spent from the consolidated fund of India except the authority of the law passed by parliament. No tax can be levied except by the law, authority of law passed by parliament. And no borrowing can be made. Of course, there is no limit today, but Parliament has, Constitution has also provided that there should be a law to bring a ceiling on the borrowing. Through FRBM Acts, we are trying to bring some sort of discipline. But the short point which I am trying to drive at, that if we want to strengthen our democratic system, parliamentary form of democratic system, And now if I understand correctly, many eminent lawyers are also present here, that as per Supreme Court's ruling, parliamentary system of our constitution is the basic structure of the constitution, which cannot be amended, which cannot be altered. Therefore, how to make it strong? How to make it more effective? The third problem, the huge electorate. When the first election took place and when the 14th election to Lok Sabha took place, you compare what were the size of the electorate, and it is going to be more. You cannot go on increasing the size of the deliberative body infinitely. Therefore, how to establish contact between the elector and the elected? What is the role of the third tier in the government? Whether the real devolution of power and authorities could be transferred in true sense of the term, so that the pressure on legislative assembly and finally on parliament are being limited to few subjects and few ideas. I have not really answered to all of these questions, but these questions are staring at our face. Apart from both what Mr. Ram, Sri Khilani and Malini has pointed out, that corruption, some sort of cynicism, which is entering into our system, how to address those issues. And I deeply appreciate the objective which they have stated in the small booklet which they have given to us. They say that we will function as a public policy resource outlet and not a journalistic recourse. This should be. Three basic issues which you are going to take as your primary objective, that undertaking research on current topics, promotion dialogue and debate, and holding track 2-type roundtables on international issues and conflicts. This is very important in the sense, world has really emerged as a global village, and however we may wish, even if we desire so, we have no such intention, but even if we wish that we will remain in isolation, we cannot remain, because what happens in one part of the world must have its impact on us. Therefore, it is best how to address it, and if there is informed, structured debate, discussions, and final some view comes, it will be beneficial to all of us and it will be beneficial to the system. I sincerely thank the Hindu who has, particularly Kasturi and Sons, for 134 years they have served this great nation, and our history of journalism goes side by side with our history of freedom struggle. The journalists, the newspapers, particularly like those of Hindu and many others, have contributed immensely in furthering our national cause, which ultimately brought independence, constitution, democracy and republic, and it is our responsibility to preserve that. In conclusion, I would just like to quote one small observation of Benjamin Franklin, which he said while he was asked. He was one of the draftsmen of the USA Constitution. One lady asked him one day, well, doctor, we the women deliver child within 10 months. What you have delivered, doctor, for almost 2.5 years? Dr. Benjamin Franklin's response was, a republic, provided you can keep it. Therefore, our forefathers have provided us with a republic, with constitution, with democracy, and it is our responsibility to preserve that. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for the patience.
Finally, may I request Mr. N. Ravi, Director, Kasturi and Sons Limited, to make the concluding remarks.
Honorable Rashtrapati Ji, Mrs. Gandhi, Mr. Advani, Mr. Deve Gowda, distinguished leaders and guests, we at the Hindu Center for Politics and Public Policy could not have hoped for a better start, with the highest office of the land being associated with the inauguration of a fledgling center, and with the participation of leaders whose actions could shape the future and make a difference to the lives of the people. Together with this heady start comes the burden of expectations, even as we take small steps which we hope can contribute to the political discourse. With all your cooperation, we expect to explore solutions to long-standing problems, to turn the power of ideas into the utility of practice. We are most thankful to the Honorable Rashtrapati Ji for not just his presence and inspiring words, but for the gracious hospitality in this auditorium as well. The presence of the distinguished guests, Mrs. Gandhi, Mr. Advani, Mr. Deve Gowda, leaders in politics, industry, diplomats, leaders of culture and the media, will be a source of inspiration for us as we begin this journey. We hope all our distinguished guests, the academics, and others would continue to be generous with their time and involvement in our quest for contributing to the political discourse. We are most thankful to the staff of the Rashtrapati Bhavan Secretariat, Ms. Omita Paul, Mr. Venu Rajamani, Mr. Rajneesh, Group Captain Vedati, and other officials, and the staff of the Hindu Center and the Hindu, in particular Dr. V.S. Sambandhan, Ms. Mandira Modi, Ramanujam, and C.V. Balasubramaniam, to designer Vivek Sani and his team, filmmaker Chetan Shah, who has produced a film for the Hindu Center, the eminent Carnatic musician Vidwan Sri T.M. Krishna, whose fortuitous presence in Delhi and generosity were tapped by us for the invocatory song, and all of whom have helped turn the Honorable President's generous hospitality into a most memorable event.
Ladies and gentlemen, please rise now for the national anthem.